Good morning and welcome to Worship at Hollywood. We are entering the final stages of Joseph's journey. Our service today will focus on following our words with a corresponding action that supports those words. Please join me as we enter into worship together. Even though we are not worshiping together physically, we can still join our voices with RJ in music and the Lunde family in praying the word.
Let's all sing together, friends.
Salvation sounds a new beginning. As distant hearts begin believing, redemption's bid is unrelenting. Your love goes on. Your love goes on. You carry us when the world gives way. You cover us with your endless grace. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. The time is up for chasing shadows. You gave the world a light to follow. A hope that shines beyond tomorrow. Your love goes on. Your love goes on. You carry us when the world gives way. You cover us with your endless grace. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting through the furthest hearts, you gave your life for all to see. Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting for the furthest hearts, you gave your life. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless.
morning. My name is Jonas and this is my grandmother Lydia. We will be praying the word of Psalms 15. I will pray the one that says 1. Please join my grandmother that says all. Sabbath, peace, and health be with you.
And also with you.
Praise the Lord. Let us pray. God, as we wander far from home, we long to shelter in your tent and rest on your holy mountain.
By your Spirit, help us walk blamelessly, doing justice and speaking truth from our hearts.
May we never wound others with our words, nor ever harm or insult our friends and neighbors.
Evil and injustice are disgusting to us. Our hearts long to honor you.
Help us to keep our promises even when it hurts.
When we give money to others, we will give freely and without interest.
We'll never sell our souls to ignore the cries of the innocent.
Everyone who does these things will never stumble. They will walk in your light and find rest in you. Amen.
Amen.
In the quiet, in the stillness, I know that you are God. In the secret of your presence, I know there I am restored. When you call, I won't refuse. Each new day again, I'll choose. There is no one else for me, none but Jesus, crucified to set me free. Now I live to bring Him praise. Chaos and confusion, I know you're sovereign still. In the moment of my weakness, you give me grace to do your will. So when you call, I won't delay. And this is my song through all my days. There is no one else for me, none but Jesus, crucified to set me free. Now I live to bring Him praise. There is no one else for me, none but Jesus, crucified to set me free. Now I live to bring Him praise. And all my delight is in you, Lord. All of my hope, all of my strength, and So my delight is in you, Lord, forevermore. There is no one else for me, none but Jesus, crucified to set me free. Now I live to bring him praise.
Some of us have been facing insurmountable challenges, and I hope you're taking time to connect with each other and support each other during the week. We've got a few groups meeting online, and I encourage you to see the information on that at the end of this service and on our Facebook post. And if you can use special prayer right now, you can leave your prayer request in the comment section or send a private email to the address at the bottom of the screen. This morning, I asked Gary Channer to share a piece of his own family history. Gary, is there any significance to yesterday?
Kirsten, absolutely. June 19th is significant because that is the day of liberation from slavery for many African Americans. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation was written in 1863, June 19th, 1865 is significant because that was the day that slaves in Texas finally got word that they were liberated.
Really? I remember as a kid learning about the Underground Railroad and emancipation, but I don't remember Juneteenth. How did you learn about it?
Well, my maternal grandmother, who was born in 1888, lived with us while I was growing up in New York, and she and my mother were very keen about keeping us appraised of African American history because it wasn't taught in the school system.
I can't imagine what that must be like, to see history that you know about omitted from our history books. What else did they tell you?
Well, my grandmother and mother told me that my great-grandparents, my mother's maternal grandparents, were former slaves, and that she was able to learn a lot about her grandparents' life as a slave up until they were freed at the Emancipation Proclamation. For example, my grandfather joined the Union Army, and my great-grandmother was a Native American member of the Choctaw Nation. Often, African slaves would run away and join Native American tribes to have their freedom. When slave bounty hunters found them, they would also enslave, whenever possible, Native Americans, and this is how my great-grandmother became a slave. After the Civil War, my great-grandparents married and moved west and settled in Missouri, where my grandfather was born in 1884.
You've taught me a lot today, so there's personal significance for you.
Yes, as a matter of fact, this is one of the earliest photos that I have of my grandparents, my mother as an infant, and my aunt on the way to celebrate Juneteenth in a neighboring town.
Thank you, Gary. I see how freedom didn't just happen one day because the Emancipation Proclamation said it was so. It was a process, a long process for our country to act on that proclamation. And true freedom for all in our country is still a work in progress even today. Thanks for sharing. Okay, kids, teacher Kelsy has something for you next.
Thank you, Kirsten, and Gary, for sharing with us your family history. Well, it's time for Kids Corner. And today, I'm going to be talking about how we can match good actions to the good things we say.
Good day, James. Have you heard about the man from Nazareth?
The one named Jesus? The one who heals people and chases away demons?
Yes. I hear he's talking to a group of people just outside of town.
What are you waiting for? Let's go.
Don't judge other people. Do for other people the same things you want them to do for you. Be careful of false prophets. They come to you and look gentle like sheep, but they are really dangerous like wolves. You will know these people because of the things they do. Good things don't come from bad people, just as grapes don't come from thorn bushes, and figs don't come from thorny weeds. In the same way, every good tree produces good fruit, and bad trees produce bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. You will know these false prophets by what they produce.
Jesus said a lot more to the crowd that day, and you can read all about what he said for yourself by going to Matthew chapter 5 in the Bible. But today, I want to talk to you about what Jesus said when he compared people to trees. Imagining yourself as a tree sounds like fun. If it sounds fun to you, go ahead and imagine you're a tree, and let's figure out together what Jesus meant when he said, a good tree produces good fruit. Do you have siblings? Or maybe cousins or friends that you spend a lot of time with, whether you like it or not? Well, I have a sister that is 2 years younger than me, and when we were little, like you are now, we spent a lot of time together. It was just the two of us, so we either played together or we played alone, and playing together was a lot more fun. But as we grew older, and I was in middle school and she was still in elementary school, we didn't spend as much time together. And even though I would still say to my sister, I love you, when I was with my friends, I want to let her join in on the fun. And if she did something or said something I thought was stupid, I would make fun of her. If you are watching me act like this, would you think to yourself, wow, Kelsy loves her sister? No, you would think the opposite was true. It did not matter that I said I love you, because my actions did not match my words. When I realized my actions were hurting my sister, I apologized, and today we are very good friends. As a church, we've been learning about Joseph, who also had siblings, and his siblings did something mean to him. Do you remember what that was? In today's sermon, Joseph will forgive his brothers, but it's not enough to just say, I forgive you, right? So we'll have to listen to find out what Joseph does after he forgives, because what we do is more important than what we say. What we do is the good fruit that Jesus was talking about. And we want our fruit to match who we are as children of God, because people will know Jesus by the type of fruit our trees produce.
Hi everyone, Terry here, and it's offering time at Hollywood Seventh-day Adventist Church. I wanted to talk to you about two things today as we consider giving in our church. Number one is a familiar topic. I've addressed it before, and that is my belief that when we give, we set God free to bless us. There's a concept in the New Testament, I know you are familiar with it. It is that we reap what we sow. In fact, there's a verse that specifically says this in 2 Corinthians 9:6. Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. I understand that this is a challenging time for some of you. If you've lost your job or your income has been significantly lessened, then maybe you don't have as much money to give as you used to. Well, that's understandable, but I hope that you won't let that keep you from giving at all. Remember, we reap what we sow. I've had people say to me, you know, Terry, I don't have any money to give right now, so I'm going to give my time to the Lord. Great. It's wonderful. The church could use it. But remember, we reap what we sow. So if you give more time to God, you're going to get in return more time. Same thing is true with your talents. Some people say, instead of money, I'm going to give my talent to God. Well, great. The church and God's kingdom can use more talents. But remember, if you give of talent to God, he's going to bless you with more talent. So we reap what we sow. Therefore, if you want to be blessed financially, if you want more finances, then that's the area in which you need to sow. Again, I understand not everyone can do what they used to do given the current financial situation. However, if you have stopped giving simply because we don't have church anymore, we're not physically there, no one is passing the plate by, I want to challenge you on that because you don't want to stop God from blessing you. We have a great need to give. But we also want to give to a great need. And that brings me to the second point I wanted to make today. This is a tough time for our church. I asked the pastor if I could share this with you, and he gave me permission. Do you know that our tithes and offerings at our church in April was only 15 to 20% what it normally is and what it needs to be? That's significant. It's very hard for any organization to continue to operate at 20% their annual budget or 20% their regular donations. Now, granted, some of you may have stopped giving because you've lost your job. You don't have anything to give. But many of you, well, I shouldn't say many of you, but I suspect some of you have stopped giving simply because we're not there. We're not meeting together and that little offering bag isn't going by, and so we've used that as an excuse not to give. Well, I want to tell you the church has a great need. And we do not want our church to falter or not be able to do its ministries because we haven't given. Giving is very easy now. You can do it online in about 30 seconds. I know that's a little scary for some of you. Maybe you've not used a credit card or a debit card before, but go to the church's website. It's so easy, and the church really needs it. So remember two things today as you consider our offering time. You have a great need to give so that God will bless you. And you want to give to a great need, and that's our church right now. God bless you as you give.
I thought I did what's right. I thought I had the answers. I thought I chose the surest road, but that road brought me here. So I put up a fight and told you how to help me. Now just when I have given up, the truth is coming clear. You know better than I. You know the way, and I've let go the need to know why. For you know better than I. If this has been a test, I cannot see the reason, but maybe knowing that I don't know is part of getting through. I try to do what's best, and faith has made it easy to see the best thing that I can do is to put my trust in you. You know better than I. You know the way, and I've let go the need to know why. For you know better than I. For you know better than I. You know the way, and I've let take what answers you supply. For you know better than I.
Pray with me. God, thank you for the privilege that it is that we have to come into this story, a story of how you've moved and acted in a family so long ago. Give us your insights and thrill within us the points that connect with our story, and show us what you might have in store. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. We have been going through the story of Joseph, chapter by chapter, and today we're in chapters 44 and 45. And huge cliffhanger last time. Joseph has been testing his brothers, and they don't know that he is their brother, that they sold into slavery 20 plus years before that. And as they're coming into Egypt, asking to buy some food, and he's putting them through the ringer, but he's testing to see what really is in their hearts. And so we left off with them having a feast in his home, and the story continues. Then, when Joseph brings them that next morning, he tells his assistant to fill sacks of grain with as much as they can carry, and in each brother's sack of grain, he said, put the money that they brought to buy it with, put it in the mouth of the sack, just like he had done the time before. And then he said, but take my silver cup, my cup, and put it in the sack for the youngest brother, with his money also, and then send them on their way. So just as it was getting light, they all saddled their donkeys, they put the loads on, and apparently they didn't check and see what was inside. It's grain. What are you going to do, inspect the kernels? And so they put them onto the backs of their donkeys, and they're headed on down the road. And before they could get very far, it says, just barely outside of the city, the assistant of Joseph comes after them with security, and I mean just really surrounds them and said, how can you, and he said, like, why have you tried to repay evil for good? He's telling this to them, and they respond like this. Verse 7, and they said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, look, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die. We also will be the Lord's servants. And then the servant said, let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant. He didn't want to say shall die because it was Benjamin. And the rest of you shall be innocent. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. Oh, can you imagine that scene? As one sack after another is being opened and being inspected, and they're like, see, there's nothing here. We told you. Why would we do this? And when they knew they were innocent. But then when they look over and he opens up Benjamin's sack, and there is a silver cup from the Pharaoh's official that is in his sack, And they just had said the one that has the cup will surely die. Oh man, and they rip their clothes. They're just devastated. This was Benjamin that they were protecting. This was Benjamin, the father's closest, the youngest son. This was his pride and joy. This was their brother that they loved. And when they saw what happened, they ripped their clothes and they went back into the city. Verse 14, when Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him into the ground. And Joseph said to them, and Joseph's really putting it on. He says, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? I mean, he's just full on show right now. And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out our guilt of our servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whom the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me that I should do this. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. So he's saying, oh no, just the one that the cup is found, Benjamin. But as for you, you go in peace to your father. Joseph really set this up. He wants to, he loves Benjamin and he wants to spend time with him. I'm sure if the brothers had decided to just leave him, then he was fine with that option. It's a sad option, but he didn't trust his brothers yet. But he wanted to have Benjamin for himself, to be in that relationship with him again. But the other brothers, but if they were to change, how would they respond to Benjamin being held back? And so he goes, oh, so you go to your fathers in peace. And I don't think Joseph was expecting this that happens next. And this next section of scripture that actually completes the second half of chapter 44 is it's not poetry, but it's in such endearing words, it's in such passionate words that it's considered one of the most touching spots in all of scripture is what happens next. Verse 18, then Judah went up to Joseph. Judah, they're all laying down on the ground. Their clothes are ripped. They're just beside themselves with grief and surprise. And then after Judah's like, what can we do? What can we say? He then approaches. He comes close to Joseph, this man that is going to be doing this terrible thing in their eyes. Then Judah went up to him and said, "Oh, my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears. And let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself." And then he tells the story. My Lord asks his servants, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And we say, "To my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a younger brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him." Then you say to your servants, "Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him." We said to my Lord, "The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die." Judah's just laying it out piece by piece, what had happened, and he's not changing anything. There's nothing that he's trying to manipulate or twist. He's just laying it out point by point. Verse 23, then you said to your servants, "Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again." When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, "Go again, buy us a little food," we said, "We cannot go down if our youngest brother goes with us. Then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us." Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one from me, also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Now, therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then, as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge. He's saying, I became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame before my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Judah, he just lays it out point by point of what they went through. He lays out the whole situation, and he's asking for. And at the end of this argument, he doesn't try and say, "Fair, you are wrong." No, he says, in this situation, he's mapping it all out. Take me instead. I don't think Joseph saw this coming at all. I don't think he expected Judah, of all people, to approach him, to put himself on that line like that, and then to ask to take his place instead. And the first verse of the next chapter, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." Joseph. Oh, Joseph. Get out, everybody. And obviously not the brothers. So no one stayed with him, and Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud. He wept so loud, it says, that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. I think that they went and told Pharaoh. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But the brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. They were shocked. This big reveal. The translator runs out with the rest of the Egyptians, and it's just this Egyptian that they perceive as the Egyptian, and he's weeping in front of them, and they've stopped, I imagine, and then he says, "I am Joseph," in their own language, and is my father well? What? So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, probably out of obedience. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here." He points it out. And this is why he says, don't be angry. "For God sent me before you to preserve life." For God sent me before you to preserve life. Joseph looks at his situation, and he has seen a hand moving. He has seen God doing what God has been doing. And he says, do not be angry. I'm not angry. God did this so I could be here for this time, for this place, for this people, to preserve life. That is the center of that point. For the famine has lasted 2 years, and those are another 5 that are going to be coming. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for many survivors. Verse 8, so it was not you who sent me here, but God. So it's really ridiculous. The story continues that he then says, okay, so brothers, go down, go get your wives, get your children, get your father, bring all your stuff, bring it all here to Egypt, because I will provide land for you. You will have a place. You will have space here. You will be able to prosper and survive and to ride out this really terrible time. And there's another 5 more years coming. I'm going to send stuff to take you and to bring you back. It's going to be great. You must tell your father of all of my honor, verse 13, in Egypt, and of all that you've seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon... So he's speaking all these things, and I imagine them paralyzed, frozen in place, not knowing what they're going to do next. Is this Joseph? He's speaking nice things. He's saying nice things. He's saying that that we shouldn't be scared, that we shouldn't be worried, but he could kill us, and he has the power to do it, and he deserves to be able to do it because of what we did to him. And they're in terror, even though the words are coming out of his mouth of peace. But then, verse 14, then he falls. Oh, verse 12 says, and now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. He's like, it's me, don't you recognize me? And he has the Egyptian makeup on, I'm sure, and he has his head shaved, and he has Egyptian clothes, and he's probably tanner than he was before. He's more built, he's grown up, he's older. But he's like, don't you recognize me? And they're still stunned. And then he falls on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. There was proof that followed the words that he said. There was proof in the actions that he lived out in that moment after the words that he said. How rare is reconciliation in a relationship? All kinds, friendships, marriages, and especially between siblings. This is a beautiful story, incredible story of twists and turns, but to have this kind of reuniting of these brothers that had done such terrible things to each other, and then to be together in this space again. It's really beautiful. There's it continues where in verse 16 the report goes up to Pharaoh's house, it says, and that Joseph's brothers have come. I wonder how much of this story they actually knew. They must have known something, because they knew that these are Joseph's brothers, and it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat of the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, he commands him, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father, and come. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. There's an interesting contrast here. Well, there's an interesting contrast that what Joseph has, there's a contrast here embedded in this story between Joseph and Pharaoh, that Joseph is actually, because he's a Canaanite, he's from Canaan, his family is from there that Joseph is not considered Egyptian, even though to his brothers, of course, he looked Egyptian. They couldn't tell the difference. But to the Egyptians, oh, they know Joseph is not an Egyptian. And you can remember from the last story that we just went through, the last couple chapters, there were some interesting situations going on. For instance, Joseph, when he throws this big meal for his family, he sits at his table, the Egyptians sat at their table, and then his brothers sat on another one. And it says because the Egyptians don't eat with people from that area. And then there's also a lot of mention of Joseph being a Hebrew and the other ones being Egyptian earlier on in earlier chapters. You'd like to think, well, Joseph's at his table of honor, so he's sitting by himself, and the rest of his household is eating by themselves, and then of course, you know, the foreigners are sitting by themselves in that culture, because there was prejudice. There was incredible prejudice because the people from Canaan had actually the ruling party at this time was the Hyksos nationality, ethnicity, and the people that they had conquered, had taken over Egypt from, were from Canaan, that had done that to a previous ethnic group that were in the ruling parties of the land. So there was a lot of tension between these two people groups. And so the Egyptians in that day, in the 12th century, the 12th dynasty of Egypt, they kept strong boundaries between themselves and anyone from that area, which included Joseph. And even though I think, especially in his own household, and especially in the way that Pharaoh treated him, they considered him a special person in their society. He was unique. He had brought them prosperity in a time when they weren't going to be having it. He was trusted. He was liked. He was loved. But yet he was separate. And so Joseph there's a separation of race. There's always this designation that he's not one of them, even though he's supporting them, making everything work. So he has that table of honor, so to speak. Interesting detail. But then look how far the story continues, that the Egyptians, when they hear that Joseph's brother is back, they run to tell Pharaoh immediately, because they know that he has a vested interest. And so they tell Pharaoh, Joseph's brothers have come back. Like, this story is just another step. They knew the story. They cared about Joseph. And when Pharaoh and the other people of his household hear of it, they're happy too. And Pharaoh, he says, well, bring your family, bring him out. And he commands Joseph to do this. Like, have your family. I want to facilitate this reuniting. I want to do something that is going to honor you and your the reconciliation that is happening in your life right now. And you can pick the best of the land. You can take the whole area of Goshen. And they think it's on the northwest side of the Egypt area. And so he just says, yeah, bring him up. So Pharaoh goes beyond, even though there's prejudice, he goes beyond the norm, and he embraces this family. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but there's these Pharaoh is doing something beyond what culture would have allowed at that time or dictated. There's also an interesting comparison between what Joseph tells his family and what Pharaoh does. Joseph, he says, bring your things, go get your stuff, go get your families, and bring all your stuff up here because you can live up here. But then Pharaoh, when he speaks, he says, don't even worry about your stuff. you don't even have to bring your stuff. I'll provide everything you need. And there's this generosity. There's this, it goes a step further than even Joseph could have imagined. And that the fact that Joseph and Pharaoh both understood the basics of relationship and of what people need, that they need a physical place to exist, that there needs to be a physical space provided for those that are being brought out of a hard time in a hard place. There also needs to be an emotional space, emotional place that people can exist to be able to be in relationship with each other. And then there's a relational place that people need, that we often will recognize, a brother or a sister or a mother or a father, or will even be so close to a friend that will say that they're like a sibling to us, or like a parent or a grandparent if we didn't have that kind of relationship with someone else. And to give people this is necessary, to give physical, emotional, and relational spaces for people to exist in, to designate those spaces. I think that restoration and reconciliation is so complicated because it's so rarely experienced or rarely pursued, because it does need to be pursued. It can't just be something that we wait for it to happen. We need to actively pursue it. We need to identify it and move towards it in prayer and in action. So a friend of mine, Jim, he was telling me this week about a friend of his that, and we've been talking over the past couple months, a friend of his, and he gave me permission to tell this story. A friend of his had done something really hurtful, persistently hurtful to him. And so Jim told his friend, why are you doing this? Don't you know that it's demeaning who I am? Why would you say that? Why would you do this towards me? And his friend said, it's no big deal. Like, I don't, and he just kind of brushed it off. And so Jim said, I can't be in relationship with you because that's not what somebody in friendship would do. I can't be your friend if you're not going to be, if you're going to persist in this pattern of action. And so he did. He stopped reaching out, and he let him know. He told him what he had done wrong, and then he said, I unless you can acknowledge that this is wrong, I can't be in this. And he set that boundary. And his friend didn't do anything and didn't respond. And I think there was one phone call exchange, but there was no response. And months went by. And then just this week, he got a call and said, picked up the phone, and the voice on the other end he recognized, and he said, Jim, I want to tell you, I'm so sorry for the way that I've treated you. I didn't see it then. I see it now. It was wrong of me. I can't believe I was acting that way. And he apologized very specifically, very genuinely. And he said, I'm so happy that we can be in friendship again. And then they continued to talk, and it was a great conversation, and they're back into that relationship has been reconciled. It takes that intentionality of to build to build unity and to acknowledge each other's decisions to be in relationship with one another. That's one practical, interpersonal application for what some of the things I see going on in Joseph's experience is this reunification of people. There is yesterday on June 19th, every year, many people celebrate Juneteenth. And it was mentioned earlier that Juneteenth is a day that celebrates, it commemorates in 1865, on June 19th, troops came into Texas and they told and they enforced the Emancipation Proclamation that had been established in America. But that date wasn't, that was 2.5 years after Abraham Lincoln had announced the freedom for all slaves in America. Yet it took 2.5 years for that message to reach the people that were in slavery, in servitude, in bondage, in the country. And it's a terrible thing that justice did not happen immediately, that this injustice continued past the time when legislation had acknowledged that right, that all men are created equal. And so this, I celebrate this day of Juneteenth along with so many other people in our nation because it recognizes when words become action. And our words must become action. Words are great, but there must be a follow-through of it. Faith without works is dead, and words without actions are meaningless. So these words becoming action, for instance, I can say, I can talk about equality all day long, but unless I demonstrate it, unless I live it, unless I treat people with equality, unless policies are keeping equality between each other, what good is saying we're equal? Or to be like, even in Joseph's situation, to be equal but separate. To say that Jesus loves you and then act like I don't, that's a problem. I can say that I love you, but then I need to then, after that, act lovingly towards you. That our actions must follow our words. And this is something to celebrate. I was watching a documentary about black people in the South. There were pockets of people that were still in slavery up until the 1960s. From 1865 was when Juneteenth happened. 1960s, there were families, lines of families that were still in slavery because they're in this, they didn't know. And if they did know, they weren't allowed to be free yet. And there was no one to enforce the law for them. So even for them, the delay of justice, the delay of freedom was long waited for. Joseph's perspective was to preserve life. He saw that God had been doing these things to preserve life, and that was God's central focus, and that's what God was accomplishing through Joseph. And that God, through God's actions, turned a time of scarcity into a time of abundance, into a time of relationship and reconciliation, a time of incredible famine into a time of plenty and joy and relationship. That's what our God does. To preserve life, that is God's goal. And so he moves in our life and in our story to bring that about. And Joseph could see it. And that's how he translated his experience. This time, these times that we're in, that we recognize as times of scarcity and of famine and of fear, these are times that, just like the story of Joseph and his brothers, tests our hearts also. They test our hearts, and they make us ask, will we also, in our own context, in our own sphere, in our own relationships, in the way that we work, in the way that we live, will we also preserve life? Is that our goal? Are we in line with God's motive, is to preserve life? To close, there is a delay that is recognized in Juneteenth and in my friend Jim's experience and in Joseph's story. There is this delay that after the brothers brought these wagons loaded with good food, and the whole list is there, you can read it for yourself, of all the things that they brought. And so it says, so they went, verse 25 of chapter 45, so they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart became numb, for he did not believe them. It's so funny that when they told the lie before, he believed them. Oh, Joseph is dead. But now when they say Joseph is alive, he doesn't believe them. Verse 27, but when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, and the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Verse 28, and Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. And it says, and Israel, his name, the name given by God, is now used again. Right when he believes, right when he sees, right when the fulfillment of his dreams and his hopes, the fulfillment of the promise of God in his family's story, his name is picked back up in the narrative. And I'm going to give you a short little spoiler. I know I've gone long. Chapter 46, just peeking into the next chapter. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. And Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. We serve a God that is in our lives to preserve life, to bring around reconciliation, to bring this reunification of broken relationships in these thoroughly messed up families, to bring us back into relationship with each other and into relationship with him. And this God that we serve, that is moving in our lives, this God, he doesn't act like we do. He does things. He makes action, and then he tells us about it. Our words come first, and maybe our actions will follow, but God's actions are all the way along, and then he tells us about what he did. And God spoke, and God spoke. Let's pray. God, you are the God who speaks. You are the God that acts. You're the God that brings justice. And you're the God that we wait for. Lord, May we preserve life in the relationships around us, in the connections that we've broken. May we restore. Thank you for being the God of our story. Thank you for being the God that makes these things possible. We will trust you even when our hearts are numb and we can't see what will happen next. We will trust you and we'll act. We pray these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen. May God bless you.
When you move, such an easy thing for you to do. Your hand is moving right now. You are still showing up at the tomb of every Lazarus, and your voice is calling me out. And right now I know you're able, and my God, come through again. You can do all things. You can do all things but fail, 'cause you never lost a battle. No, you never lost a battle. And I know you never will. Possible by the power of the Holy Ghost. A new wind is blowing right now, breaking my heart of stone, taking over like it's Jericho, and my walls are all crashing down. And right now I know you're able, and my God, come through again. You can do all things. You can do all things but fail, 'cause you've never lost a battle. No, you never lost a battle. I know you never will. Do all things. You can do all things but fail, 'cause you never lost a battle. No, you never lost a battle. I know you never will.
Friends, thank you so much for being with us today. We're so glad that you were able to come in and worship with us. If you have any prayer requests, go ahead and leave it in the comments. If it's more private, you can go ahead and send us a direct message. Yeah, we'll see you back here at home next week. Stay safe and have a happy Sabbath. Bye-bye.